Let's start with definitions because they help us understand other aspects of the law. First among the definitions is business. It's a broad definition, covering all types of business organization and structure. It also includes for-profit and non-profit organizations. As you might guess, private interest is an important definition. Think back to the constitutional language we looked at. The law deals with conflicts between public duty and private interest. Let's look at the 6 types of private interest. The first one is simple, having ownership interest in a business. Big percentage or small, this ownership interest is a private interest. The second one goes further, creditor interest in an insolvent business. If you invested or loaned money to a business that went belly up, you have a private interest in that business until all your money gets paid back, if ever. Take a look at the third one. Here your own livelihood is a private interest. Working for a state agency doesn't prevent you from looking for another job. Just be aware that the other job embodies your private interest. This doesn't mean there's an automatic conflict of interest. It's just something to be aware of. In some circumstances, there could be a conflict. The fourth private interest speaks again to ownership, this time in real property. The most common types of real property are land, buildings, and mineral rights. The percentage of your ownership doesn't matter. It's still a private interest. The fifth one can go 2 ways, a loan that a person owes to you or a loan you owe to another person. Other debtor interests could deal with such things as collateral on a loan or lien against property. Finally, serving as a director or officer of a business stands as a private interest. Remember, business includes nonprofit organizations too. This definition doesn't mean you can't serve on a board of a nonprofit. It just means the position on the board is a private interest and you need to watch out for conflicts of interest. Here's a big one, public employee. It includes all temporary and permanent employees of state and local government. Some of you may be watching this because you serve on a board, such as a licensing board. You too are a public employee. Finally, any person under contract to the state is a public employee under the Code of Ethics. Person is a broad term. It doesn't matter whether the person is an individual acting as an independent contractor or a corporation providing services under contract. When the person is acting under that contract, she or he or it is a public employee. One thing to point out in this last definition, though, is this. State agency includes a wide range as seen in the categories appearing here. However, it doesn't include the judicial branch. The Supreme Court administers the Code of Judicial Conduct and its own Code of Conduct to guide all judges and employees in the judicial branch. This section of the Code of Ethics lays out a few requirements. Here's one. You can't have an interest in a business that you might gain from your agency's actions. This kind of self-dealing might result from your insider knowledge of what your agency intends to do. The next requirement applies narrowly, but it's important to be aware of it. If you voluntarily leave your job, you must wait a year before taking any job that deals with matters you worked on in your state job. The law says, direct advantage unavailable to others. To clarify, the law describes such matters as rules or applications you helped write, claims you made, or contested cases you worked on. You can't use your state job to disadvantage another business if you have a substantial personal interest in a competing business. Since personal interest isn't defined, this could be open to interpretation. Let's take it a step further. If you're a member of an outside organization, you can't do anything for that organization while you're on your state job. No copying, no phone calls, no emails on upcoming events, no lobbying. There is one small exception. You can do some fundraising on behalf of a charity at your state job if your supervisor okays it. Of course, this shouldn't occupy a lot of work time. The law draws a line regarding financial transactions. You may not make a substantial financial transaction with someone you inspect or supervise. This applies to a lot of relationships between the supervisor and employee, regulator or inspector and inspected business, contract monitor and contractor. Under this subsection, you may not accept money for helping anyone get a contract, claim, license, or other economic benefit from any agency. You might recognize this activity as bribery. This rule relates to the self-dealing we talked about earlier. It doesn't take much to cause the appearance of wrongdoing. Same thing goes if, in your own time, you work for the business in some capacity. Another area of possible self-dealing is employment. Remember that one element of private interest is employment or prospective employment. So if you are, in any way, actively trying to go to work for an employer that you regulate, you must first let your supervisor and the department director know, in writing. Whether you can take that job is another matter. You can see that Rule 2-2-121 addresses complicated issues. Here's another, though not as common. A state employee who serves as officer or director of an outside organization has to be hands-off regarding certain activities at work. This applies when the organization is coming to the agency for some proceeding. It also applies when the agency and the organization are both at another public proceeding.